Ladies and gentlemen, with it being 10 o'clock, we're going to go ahead and get this meeting called to order. Ms. Cadetsy, if you don't mind calling the roll, please.
Good morning. Josie Barnhart,
Here.
Pat Bradford,
I am here.
and Stephanie Craybill.
Here. The next thing on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance, so if we would stand for that. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Moving right along, we're going to go to approval of the agenda. With that, I'll take a motion. A motion
Move to approve the agenda.
and I'll second it. Discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? So the agenda is approved. And moving on to approval of the minutes, we have both the January and the February minutes. And so for next meeting, we'll be approving the March and the April minutes. My only note, and I don't know if this is something that we have to technically notate, is in the, just make sure, I think it's the it's February meeting minutes. I don't think we ever technically approved the agenda, and so I don't know if we need to make a note of that.
I think we should just make a note that we forgot, and, we conducted the business, so unless anybody is objecting, but, we've had people object to meetings before, and try and rescind stuff, but I'm okay with doing it.
So if we can make that note for next time, and with that change.
I also have another, which meeting was that, the January or the February?
I believe that was the February.
Okay. So, yeah, my comments weren't in that one.
Yours were with the.
Yeah,
January?
what I had was in the January meeting, the policy, where we talked about policy 2302, we listed that it said prevents, I think it was let me find it again, that Ms. Craybill prevents, or
The remote participation policy.
the remote participation policy. Let me just find it real quick, I'm sorry.
It's okay, it's on page 4.
Yeah. The minutes. It's coming up. Okay, where it says in, it was letter number 11. Ms. Craybill prevents proposed amendment to policy 2302, and I think it should have been presents, not prevents.
I'm fine with that change.
Me too.
Okay, and then the other one was when we talked about 4720, that was in 7. This is just, I guess it's kind of like a point of order where it says Ms. Barnhart, it's item 7, the very last line. Ms. Barnhart notes that she is okay with moving policy 4720 forward. I'm just thinking it should be more consistent with somebody made a motion, we approved, and not you just move it on. So I didn't have a chance to go back and listen to what we actually did there.
I know that was our first meeting, and so I know there was back and forth dialogue of, should we be making motions, or are we waiting to the end? So I think that was kind of in that limbo of us figuring out our groove. I think we've been doing a better job being consistent of making that motion after every one. So probably, I would have to go back and listen to the audio as well, but probably what happened is it was a consensus at the end of that discussion, and then at the end of the meeting, we voted to bring it to the board, and then the board brought it back to policy. If I just recollect.
Yeah, no, I'm fine with leaving it like it is because we did it, but just, for future, because in the other ones, even the ones that, like the one right above it with personnel, where we talked about, everybody, even though it was consensus, we all voted yes, we voted. And it didn't look like we did that I'm pretty certain we did do it, okay. but I didn't listen, so I just wanted to make a note of that. But otherwise, the big one is prevents to presents.
Well, with those changes discussed, are we able to make those changes and then we can approve the minutes, or do we need to bring the minutes back?
No, I think we're allowed to just
Okay, to
make those changes.
If we can make that note, ladies, all in favor of approving the minutes with the changes that we just recommended, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes 3-0. So we're going back to some policy updates. The first policy that we're going to talk about, I want to also say, Mr. Madden, thanks for being here. I saw you come in. You were like hidden in the bunch of everybody. But we appreciate everyone that's here today. And so we're jumping in right into policy 2230, which is board committees. The first thing that we'll see is the universal draft application. This was something that the previous board discussed, and as coming on, we wanted to provide some consistency for what it entails for us to be a part of committee applications, specifically the public-facing memberships. So this is the initial draft. My thought of this is, as we give our collective feedback here, we present it to the board, but once it's published on New Hanover County Schools website, we'd have both an English and a Spanish version so that we can have that accessibility. So there was a couple changes that I had noted for myself to make. The first is looking at, instead of saying, are you an educator, to potentially say, are you a teacher, and have the option for either elementary, middle, or high school to be checked. And then like to see a little bit larger, describe the qualifications of the committee you've chosen. And ladies, I'll open the floor if you have any other suggestions.
Yeah, I was going to suggest in that same category, central office to that elementary, middle, high school central office.
I'm okay with that.
Question, so in the open box underneath, do you have children? There's a little square there that you would check, but there's nothing in the box. So.
Good point.
Pardon me?
Good point.
Okay, so didn't know what we want to put in there, but I had some suggestions in what we could put in there when we get going. So I was also confused on the how often are you willing to serve? 3 boxes, what is your commitment level? And then all the other boxes down there is that, I was thinking the main title and the what is your commitment level are kind of redundant a little bit. But I also did want to point out to us that each committee decides their own meeting schedule based on their mission, their goals, and all that kind of stuff, and what their membership wants to do. So I think that this kind of information should be probably listed in the boxes where each of the committees are listed. You can say, and we can edit it to say, meets monthly, meets quarterly, meets as needed, so that a person doesn't even sign up to be on the committee if it's one of the ones that they know they can't meet or they don't want to meet. And then committees also stagger their enrollment. So like if they want to have a 2-year commitment, then they might roll off like half 1 year and half another. So those kind of things I think should probably not be in what is your willingness to serve kind of thing.
I like that suggestion. So we could cross out in the first chart on the left side, box 3 and 4, and on the right side, box 3 and 4, just cross that off entirely. And then what you're saying is under each of these individual committees, have the frequency, 2-year commitment as needed monthly, depending on our policy, what it says.
And definitely use our policy, because our policy does say. And so then moving down into the calendar, into the committees, I would like to suggest that we somehow delineate board standing committees versus board advisory committees. There's only 2 board standing, Title IX and EDI. And then to put these in either alphabetical order for easiness to find, or put them in the order that they appear in policy 2230. So there's some, continuity with that.
Okay, and we can even make a note at the bottom of the application to say, for full list of details, to reference policy 23.
Yeah.
Does 2330?
And then the last thing is, we don't have a bond committee.
We don't have what?
We don't have a bond committee.
Oh, I see it.
So that needs to be crossed out.
Yeah, in the past, we have had ad hoc committees. And a bond has been an ad hoc committee, but we don't have that one at present. So that might be a box, and
Well, if we could have one in the future, just.
well, no, that's what I'm saying, but we shouldn't have it on there to sign up to be on it if we don't have it. So we could put the empty box at the bottom, ad hoc committees, blah, 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 put ad hoc committees. And then that way, when we do get an ad hoc committee established, then people can use this form and they don't have to go searching all over the place. They just check the ad hoc committee and make a line where you write in what it is in case we were to have two at one time, which we
So-
have had before.
Okay, so, I like, Ms. Bradford, do you like what she's saying? To recap, have two kind of categories, board standing committees, board advisory committees.
Yeah, the more information you can put on the form to help them fill it out, the better. Couple of suggestions, and help me with this. Are there any qualifications that we have set out in policy somewhere that says what you have to be on a committee?
The only place it would be is if you get out the policy and you actually read the different things, it'll tell where we really haven't said you must be a teacher to be on this. So that is what my suggestion was going to be with the space that we're living here is we need much more room to describe qualifications and experience. I was thinking skills, and maybe even the word interest. Why are you interested in being on this committee?
Yeah, the more they can put down, and she's right, we've got a couple of empty boxes there, but, if they have to be a county resident, great. Children in New Hanover School, do we want to ask what their ages are? Educator, are you a teacher or educator? You could flesh that one out a little bit.
I don't understand the difference, what you're trying to flesh out with teacher and educator.
To figure out where they are. Literally ask
Elementary,
them,
middle, high,
where do you
central
serve?
office. Elementary, middle, high, central office.
Right. And working for the school system, it's the same thing there.
Not really, because working for the
Under
school system is like, you could be a bus driver, you could be a child nutrition worker.
I'm asking, do you want that on this form, what
That's
their
what it
job
is.
is?
That's what the New Hanover County Schools is meant to be, right, Ms. Barnard?
Yeah, so my thought
But
process.
to be specific about what position they
What
hold.
position? So what you are saying is you would like to see, instead of just saying, do you work for New Hanover School System? Yes or no? If yes, then they could
Right,
fill
and
in.
the same for the teacher educator. Willing to serve, you could use the word, the term versus commitment to your term. But again, that needs to be a lot bigger, as Ms. Crable has said. Qualifications needs to be a lot bigger.
And I would add the words, somewhere we have to get experience and interest. Because me as a committee chair, and me as a committee member, I would be interested to know why the person sitting next to me is sitting next to me.
Well, their answer will tell you a lot.
No, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But if you don't have a place directly asking why are you interested?
And we just kind of need to beef it up a little bit.
Okay. Did you have any other suggestions, Ms. Bradford, like looking this over?
I don't think so. And you can move bond down to the bottom, but you never know, we might want a bond, so you might as well have a form.
Well, I kind of agree to, if we had an ad hoc committee write-in, that could be a bond at the time, but since it's not a standing committee or advisory committee.
Yeah, it should be organized by, standing, advisory, ad hoc, 3 different.
Well, and there's only 2 standing. They could be on the top line with an asterisk next to them or something. And then all the rest of them, I think, should definitely be at least alphabetized. And then maybe the last box to check would be ad hoc, so that we.
Yeah, alphabetized
So
would work
it's
better.
yeah, alphabetical works.
Yeah.
And I know, Ms. Crable, you had brought the suggestion up about having a list of who is serving on these committees, public on our website, or what were you thinking about?
Well, it currently is. Some committees do have the people listed.
Some of them.
Some of them do.
Right.
So that you, as a community member, know who you can contact. Basically, it would be best to contact, the committee chair, if you have questions. But if you know people on the committee, we don't have to have that, but it was just something that we thought was important, years and years ago. I mean, I've been on several committees for many years, and it's just nice to know who's on the committee so that you could reach out. I might not want to talk to you, but I might be more comfortable talking to Ms. Bradford. Yeah.
I agree. This could go to 2 pages, front and back, and we need to tell people where to turn it in, how to turn it in, once they have it. You submit it by email, you submit it by mail, you walk it down to the board office, whatever, but we need to so that we can hit everybody that has internet, doesn't have internet, and so on.
I mean, I would kind of default to Dr. Bowser's central office if we were looking for, obviously, we would have it online, everything we have is online, but to have paper copies, where could we say the submission to be on a district level committee?
You want paper copies?
I would suggest
We have a box over
it
there on
all
the table.
being
of board
online,
meetings.
like so that we can capture it in a database. And that if anybody is not comfortable filling it out online, they go ask their principal, and the principal can fill it out, or they can sit there at the school and fill it out,
That would work.
and then still come back, because it's got to be entered, somehow.
I
So
agree.
oftentimes, we provide individuals with a laptop at
Right.
the school so they could go in and,
Just like with enrollment,
Right.
that you can sit down and do it, and we'll help you.
but if I'm going to, do you want a paper copy? Because I don't want it to get lost. That's my biggest thing.
I don't want it to either. That's why I said I'm
So we
looking
would
to you
prefer
guys to
that
say.
if an individual wants to go to a school and if they don't have access to a computer, they can go to a school. And just as we enroll students, we give them the opportunity to use a laptop. We have a laptop for them to use. We can do the same thing with this and just show them where it is on line.
And it's also makes sense because then we have a database where we can easily look it up. And somebody's saying, oh, I'm not getting informed, well, maybe we typed in their email wrong. It's really easy to keep, for the committee chairs to keep track.
And looking at this, the application, just putting a date, will be closed by September 30th, but then also we need to have a spot of notification so our individuals know an acceptance or regret. I don't think that there's going to be many regrets, if any, going out on committees, but just so that they know that they're going to be notified. And so that if it's all online, then they could get that instant notification. We've received your application, and then there will be a follow-up as well. Ms. Bradford, sorry.
So we're going to do this in English and in Spanish. We have no other options for the other languages that our
Don't we have
families speak.
translate?
I think we would have options. I know those two are probably the most prominent, but I know that we have German and Ukrainian, all
And
sorts
so
of
if
different
somebody,
languages.
say, spoke Arabic, they would, what, Dr. Faust,
So,
get a translator?
well, no, what could happen is if this is in a Google Doc, we can change the language, I'm assuming. That's Anita and Josh for that one.
Yeah, we would need to look into it. My recommendation would be to take this information, put it into a Google sign-up form, essentially, much like we've used for the event this evening. And then, Anita, can you help me out? If it's a Google Doc product, I know on our website you can translate into any language. Is it similar on a Google Doc like this? A Google form? Dawn says yes. Okay.
It is, but we can also place the record on our website and translate.
Right. So the answer is yes. If we go all digital, any language, yes.
Okay, so I think this has been a lot of really good information. I would recommend that we bring this back to policy committee with all the changes that we have said prior to bringing it to the board. Would you guys feel comfortable with that?
But I have before you do that, one quick question.
Okay.
When you have so these columns are similar. So when it says, are you a New Hanover County resident? Yes or no, that's fine. It says, are you an educator? Would it be okay to put them line on? I'm just talking about flow. Can we rearrange the flow?
Absolutely.
Okay. I
Absolutely.
didn't want- Yeah.
This is initial draft content, and yes.
Did you do this, Josie?
I had help from Ms. Kadetsky over there. We talked about things and we put it all together, and I said, you're going to get more feedback from the other members of the committee. But I did want to ask, Mr. Madden, looking at this, you have parents that are coming and supporting your school. Does this look like something that would be intimidating for parents and people of the public to be involved in the district level, or do you think this is cohesive for what the expectation is as far as wanting people to volunteer with their district?
I think it's fine. I think
Okay.
it's very user-friendly.
So so I'm looking down here at the bottom where it says all applications will be collected. So we're not going to collect, we're going to submit.
So we can say that submitted.
But
Yeah.
I would also, there might be instances where we might have rolling, applications that, suppose we have a vacancy, somebody's leaving.
Could we say something like the applications will be submitted by September 30th unless,
Or on an as-needed basis or something, because I just want, I want to leave it open so that people, like if you miss the 30, I mean, the beginning of school year is a really hard time, for parents to try and figure out, they're just trying to get their kids on their bus and to school and learn their teachers' names, and that might be hard, to have a complete drop-dead date for all of our committees when we might need people throughout the year, or like a committee chair might want to repost, somewhere, and we can make an announcement that we're
Right.
reposting.
I'll just offer this form, if it goes digital and it's on the website, it may not need to be time bound at all. On the back end, on the receiving end, we'd probably need a coordinator per committee that we would turn over that application to, and then it'd be on that individual representative of that committee to reach out with the acceptance or the regrets, or kind of a rolling list. So I don't think, and I haven't thought too far into it, but I don't think it would be a problem to have just a link to apply to be on a committee that's just open in perpetuity on the website, and then we can add or subtract as necessary over time and coordinate with that applicant.
If that's the case and we can apply at any time, could we just have a notification within 30 days?
And committee members, this is Jason. One other thing for you to consider, each of these committees, their membership, generally speaking, is defined by your board policy 2230. So, some of these committees have, requirements for, who makes up the committee itself, whether it's, board members, parents, business, community, industry leaders. And so is it your intent that this application would need to be completed by anyone who wants to serve on any committee, whether they're a parent, educator, local business leader, or otherwise?
Still be bound by the policy committee itself. So looking at what the policy description is and who has to be on the committees, that is not changing. This is just saying the opportunity to serve. So if I'm interested in a few different committees and all the spots for calendar, for instance, is filled up with the parents that are needed, then I would still have the opportunity to serve in another capacity, if that makes sense. So I'm not trying to change the makeup of who is serving.
And I'm sorry, my audio might have gone out. I don't know if the mics are still on there. And I just asked because at the top, right, there are boxes to check if you're a parent or an educator or a new Hanover County resident. You might want to consider including a box that says other, because you have some committees where they're made up of, for example, 2 community representatives. It'll have business, human resources directors for example, like your CTE Business Advisory Council has a lot of different specific types of individuals and who may be eligible to serve. And one way to capture that would just be to have an other box where they would write in what their background is as it might apply to the committee that they're interested in.
I'm thinking that would show up under the category, the line where it says describe your qualifications and interests. And some of our committees basically are made up mainly of central office staff, and teachers, with that. And so I'm not certain that I'm clear on, are we gonna ask teachers to fill this out if they're interested in being on a committee, specifically? teachers have to apply or that principals have to apply to be, like Shaq has to have, certain number of people. The Educator of the Year committee has to have certain people. The curriculum committee, so are we trying to control that too? Or is that the committee chair can pick some of their own, appropriate staff members?
I'll just talk louder, I guess. So my intent for this and what I thought whenever it was given direction was for outside community members.
Right,
Parents
right.
and people in the community. So staff are absolutely welcome to serve, central office are expected to serve, so are the board members. So this was not the intent for that. This was to have a format for our community members to show what the consistency is for the expectation of, these are your opportunities to serve. When I was going through and listing out the committees, these were the committees that had public-facing representation. And so that's why I put them on there, and so I absolutely love the suggestion for board standing or board advisory. So this has more work to do, and with the information that you guys have provided, I think we have a lot of groundwork to input some that, all of our ideas in one night. I'm gonna make the recommendation to move this in policy, to stay in policy for next month with those recommendations, so we can mull it over and hopefully get it to the board.
No, another question was, so, with that said, I think that we should change the title so that it's clear that, and this is not a new Hanover County Schools application, this is a Board of Education application, if that little semantic matters at all. But it's a universal community, or community universal application, so that people are clear that you only have to use this if you're a community member or a parent that is applying. Right, because it comes back to my point, if I'm a teacher and I want to be on let's say, calendar committee, do I have to fill one of these things out? And if that is what each committee wants, then they could choose to do that. But I think that's the clarification that I wanted to
Okay,
make.
and we'll take that. So we have a first and a second, all in favor of keeping this in policy?
Before we do,
Yes.
so it's not, this right here is, I just want to make sure that when we're looking at policy 2230, and it shows up in letter E, that we will eventually probably have to, where it says 5, recruit and maintain a diverse committee membership using a common membership. I think we will have to, eventually make a note using blah, blah, blah. We could call it, 2230R or whatever, whatever the regulation is, to be part of that. Or at least reference that we have one.
So all in favor of keeping this in policy for next month to discuss with those changes that we suggested? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so that brings to the second part of 2230, which is board committees. And so there was a couple, moving down, did anybody have any suggestions? I do not, for finance, the EDI, and the student scholarship. I'm kind of into like the legislative. Was there something up for finance?
Excuse me, board members, I apologize. Our streaming system has gone down and they're troubleshooting currently. So I think that the audio is the issue. It's still streaming visually, but I don't even think Jason can hear us. So my recommendation is if we could take 5 to try to address that. Are we back up?
Josh, I can hear you.
You can hear me, Jason?
Can
Yeah.
you hear me, Jason?
Yes, that's better. I think it's back.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that, Josh. And so with that being said, policy 2230, board committees. I wanted to first discuss the legislative committee. And so there was a question about the amount of people on the legislative committee and potentially with open meeting laws and triggering those. And so the discussion became, should we change the makeup of the description of the committee? And so rereading that to me, the first paragraph, the purpose of the committee is to serve as a liaison between the Board of Education, local, state, and elected officials to enhance their awareness. I'm fine with, it's the second paragraph that I wanted us to discuss today, because I'd like to change that. So,
It really doesn't matter, and Jason can jump in and correct, it really doesn't matter if we have 2 or 3 members on a committee. If you have the majority of those people present, you're in the open meetings law. So by taking away one person,
I don't want to take anybody away.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean,
but if you have 4, it puts us into the quasi, making decisions without the whole entire board being here, because you have 4. So we
Well,
can't have 4 board members.
I would disagree with that because what we're supposed to be doing is bringing it to the committee for, if there's a motion to be brought forth by the committee, then it would be either a recommendation from the legislative committee, if there was 4. It would either be a recommendation, a not recommendation, or a split decision, and then the board would be the deciding factor as to whether or not we move forward with a decision. Am I correct in understanding that, Jason?
Right. I mean, typically, you don't have 4 members on a committee because, it becomes a question of whether it's the full board or not. I mean, I think the policy here is clear that this is an advisory committee that can't bind or make decisions for the whole board. The issue would be, with 3 members, if any 2 have any meetings with legislators or otherwise, and they're talking about legislation that impacts the district, they're arguably, conducting committee business, and you would have open meetings law requirements that you'd have to follow. So one way to, avoid isn't the right word, but one way to,
Circumvent.
be able to, well, that's probably a worse word.
That's
But
a worse word.
One word, one way to make sure that, because this is a committee made up of people who are interested in legislative issues, right? That's why individuals serve, would be to expand membership to 4. And that way, if any 2 are, meeting with, whether it's legislators or, are in Raleigh, you wouldn't have the open meetings law requirements of notice and the other requirements that you'd have to, make sure that you're following. One potential downside of that would be split votes. There could be 2-2, but since the committee is purely advisory, it can't, and none of these can bind the full board. That's something to take into consideration, but it wouldn't necessarily stop business from being done. If for some reason there was a 2-2 vote, then that result would just be reported to the full board when the committee does its, monthly or however often updates. And then the full board gets to decide, what it wants to do on whatever the particular issue is. And so it's certainly not a silver bullet. It does raise some of its own issues, but it's one way to allow individuals who serve on this committee, because they're, passionate about these issues, be able to have those conversations.
So my 2 thought processes were, if we increase the capacity to 4 board members, then when 2 board members talk to any legislative official, it's not an open meeting, but we're able to incorporate more people to have a discussion about things going on, or potentially even being a committee of the whole board, but only requiring a quorum to conduct legislative committee meetings. And so I wanted to open that up for discussion. But the other thing is, when this was explained, and because I'm the legislative chair of leading it, I thought the process was that the legislative committee was going to bring forth a legislative agenda to advocate on behalf of New Hanover County Schools. And rereading this, it sounds like we're just supposed to be the liaison for the NCSBA and whatever they say for legislative. And so I kind of wanted to rechange the wording of that second paragraph, because the legislative committee should be utilizing, in my opinion, our strategic plan, feedback from our central office, from our elected officials, or not our elected board officials, of the things that are important and that we need to advocate for. Obviously, if a legislative agenda is created, the board would approve it, but then we would have a common goal of the things we're working towards on behalf of New Hanover County.
So to that point, where you look in the first paragraph, the purpose of this committee is to serve as the liaison between the Board of Education and local and state elected officials. So we say that straight out. I am not in favor of having 4 members on a committee because it could imply that 4 people on that committee are making decisions of the board. Because if we were to have a board meeting and only 4 of us were there, then we could do whatever we wanted as 4 if the other 3 weren't there. So I am cautious and leery about that. And the other thing that I heard you say, that which I agree with, but I don't think that we're doing it in practice, is that to me, well, not to me, what this was designed to do was for you guys to do what Ms. Bradford does, is keep her notebook on this is what is happening in the state legislature. These are the bills, and we're reviewing them, we're talking about them, and then bringing those to the board, kind of like what Jason does with us, from time to time, and what the NCSBA does with us. They send us, this is what's out there. And so that you guys bring that to us and then we discuss. Not, because what happened I thought in the first legislative committee meeting is we were talking about programs that people on your committee had already talked with the school system about, and the board had not heard anything about it. So I felt that was kind of backwards. So that's what I wanted to make sure that we were clear that the legislative, if that is what we want as a whole board, that the legislative committee is, you follow it, you learn more about it, you tell us, and then we say, hey, folks, go back and advocate on behalf of our board. And that's the part that I think that just has to be very, very clear.
Yes, ma'am.
My concern with 4 would be, if we're sitting here now as a legislative committee, there's one other person, now we're in a tie vote constantly. That's my concern.
As far
Well,
as,
and maybe not, but
But it
well,
has the
I mean-
potential for that.
but
as
you would
far
do-
as, ladies,
sorry.
as far as the description, this is important because it's one way. I thought the idea was we were going to figure out the things that New Hanover County Schools wanted to advocate for. Looking at it again, it sounds like it's just a means to look at legislation. So this committee has the opportunity to get the entire board on the same page for things that could benefit our students, specifically for New Hanover County. The School Board Association has a broader scope. They serve a lot of counties across the state, so they're not going to advocate for a specific program that we want to do. So I thought that we would create our own legislative agenda with board approval, and that is part of the plan that we had openly discussed in the legislative committee. It hasn't happened yet because this is a process, but like I said, I would like to put the wording in here. The legislative committee would be responsible for creating a legislative agenda to be approved by the board, following our strategic plan and getting guidance and input from our central office, so that there's a collective vision to advocate with our elected officials. And if that is a consensus that this board wants to change the description, or that the committee wants to change the description and bring that to the board, that's what I would like to see. Yes,
I'm
ma'am.
in agreement. I like your description. I like the idea that we would create a legislative agenda. I like that a lot because, yeah, we're our own advocates, and I don't want to be, anyway, I'm not a fan of opposing what's going on in the legislature with referendums and so on. My concern is the 4. So if we can split those 2 things into 2 different
So to keep,
discussions.
the committee will be comprised of 3 board members, preferably at least 1 from each. 1 board member on this committee will also serve as a board liaison to the NCSBA per policy 2650, liaison to school boards, and follow NCSBA legislative updates and other activity. And follow.
Ms. Barnhart?
Yes.
I need to interject this part, is that when we are reviewing changes this substantial, we need to have them uploaded into Assembly so that we can see the wording. It is very, very difficult to follow along with just words being added in. Because that's what happened with several other policies, and we didn't get a chance to actually talk about them. So I'm not comfortable with adding, I'm listening to what you're saying, and I like the legislative agenda idea, but I think that we need to have it typed in so that the community can see this clearly, that we can see this clearly, our fellow board members, to do that. And if we were going to have 4, which I will not advocate for at all, but then we would need to change the wording that says, not preferably 1 from each party, equal representation from parties as applicable, as appropriate.
I think she just said back off on the 4. I think
Yeah, I
you
mean,
might have
the
missed that.
consensus is we want to keep 3, like what I'm hearing in the discussion. So what I'm saying, I will do a better job. There is a changeover, and so I will do my best to try to make correct edits and work with Ms. Kadetsky that we have that in writing. So looking over it, though, when it was posted in Assembly and from reflecting on it and looking at my notes, this is one of the things that I had made a note to discuss openly, because I think we would be able to advocate for our students and our staff and our families in New Hanover County better if we were creating our own legislative agenda in discussions with other entities. The county also has a legislative agenda. Our Chamber of Commerce have a legislative agenda. And so there might be other avenues of individuals that will also be able to help amplify our voice for our students. And so if you want to keep this in policy, and I can type that up so that we have the change.
I'm okay create legislative agenda and then getting the powers that are to type it up and bring it to the board, if that's your interest. I don't need to see it, with track changes and so on. So it's totally up to the consensus. I'm good either way.
I'm just a proponent so that we do not lose track that we do that. And if you look on our main points, that this was kind of a surprise to me, because in our main points where it says we will review policy 23 board committees and discuss a universal application. In addition, we will talk about the finance committee. This committee was not even on there. So I didn't even have a chance to be thinking about what we're talking about. So I would like to hold this in committee until we get the wording appropriate. But I am in favor of creating a legislative agenda.
Okay. And my other question that I wanted to bring up, looking down at the CTE Business Advisory Council, I would want to know, and there's some legislation regarding to committee makeup, but I know that the strategic plan calls for a 40% increase of our CTE programs, as well as we have a strategic plan goal of community partnership. And so I'd like to see us be able to increase. And if you look at number 3, paragraph 2, it says the council will have, and I would suggest crossing out, at least 15 members, including the superintendent or designee, at least 1 board member, but up to 3. And then keep on listing the rest of career and technical education. And so that way we're not in violation of our policy. Now we have 1 representative, but this gives the opportunity for up to 3 board members, because building those relationships with individuals who are already advocates for our school system and want to help support, I think that would be a valuable resource and great added benefit for our students.
Madam Chair?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm good with that.
I am not good with making these changes without hearing from Dr. Faison and Ms. Futrell. And Dr. Faison isn't here, and Ms. Futrell is not online. Because some of this is very dictated, through Perkins and who is on there, and to change their policy without having them here to have any input, and they didn't even have a chance to look, like I said, in the main points, so they had no idea this was coming up. Unless, you told them and you got their specific feedback. So I would ask that we hold that change also. And if you want to change things, put it in writing.
We can hold this in committee. I will second that. All in favor of keeping this in committee? Aye.
Aye.
Just for some clarity, we had asked not to make any changes, because that's how we were doing it. We're able to track. And so when you come to the board, what we would do typically is we would type it in, or actually Jason or
And Pat, yeah.
would type it in, and then they would do the red blue line, because we weren't able, when I say we we were not able to track what the changes were versus the new versus the old. So this helps us when we're doing it. We're making notes also.
Okay.
And then whomever is going to do the blue line, then they get it back, and then we go back, and then we make sure that it's all what everyone said. So
Okay, well, moving forward, I will work with Pat, Ms. Kadetsky, in making sure to have language changes, but the problem became
no. What I'm saying, you don't have it,
to not do that,
Right,
just so
so
to
what
give these suggestions
because
right
that's what
now.
we've done in the past. It would be just what we're doing. We're sitting here and we're debating on words, those types. We would do that, and then we would say this, and then someone would read it back. Does this sound right? And then we would bring it out to the board, blue line, red line, whatever. And that's how, because if you go ahead and put it into the policy, we're not able to see which one was the actual policy versus the new wording. So then we would have to print something like, then we would lose. For us, it was just, this is easier for us, I'll say that. This is easier for us to be able to track, and if you're giving insight, then we can make notations and put that in. That's just something that helps us stay on track, and the person who is.
So you appreciate it happening this way, is what you were saying?
Yes, this is the way that I'd ask you to do it. Go back to that, please.
Chair, before we leave board committees, you had mentioned finance. Dr. Faust, you remember we had some discussion on finance
I
that
thought I
last
recalled, yeah.
2 sentences. The committee is comprised of, at a minimum, 2 board members, the chief financial officer, 3 individuals from senior leadership, and a representative from each school level, elementary, middle, and high. That wasn't what you said, was
We
it?
said there.
What I recall there is that we had it in policy, but we did not invite someone from the school level to attend the finance committee.
Dr.
So
Faust
it's
had a
always,
change in the language.
I'd have to go back and watch
Okay. Will
that
you
portion.
please-
Yes.
Because you twice you said the change, and I liked whatever it was, but I don't remember what it was.
So we will make those, you'll have your homework, and we'll make those changes to be able to approve 2230 at this time. I'm sorry for going over on times. That brings us to policy 4720, survey of students. Jason had done a recap, just all in red. So some of them are NCSBA changes, some of these are New Hanover County. The biggest issue for me, and it has been, is the protected topics. And so I see too, there's a small typo under page 1, or it's on 23 in our packet, definition of protected topics. For purpose of this policy, the following are considered, just cross out A, protected topics. Page, in our packet, page 23, A1.
Josie, if you look at that, the S is crossed off and it says is considered a protective top. It's really hard to read, but when the S is crossed out, so the A should stay in there.
And that's not a typo. The biggest issue of concern, and it has been, is on page 24, it talks about parental consent. In regards to protected topics, I still am passionate that I feel all of the surveys should be able to have parental consent. So looking at page 24, C, parental consent, before a student is required to participate in, I'm just going to, my recommendation,
Which letter are you on, Josie?
little c,
Okay.
parental consent on page 24. So before a student is required to participate in any, and I'm just going to cross out Department of Education funded surveys, so in any survey, analysis, or evaluation that reveals information concerning a protected topic, the parent or eligible student must provide prior written consent. I think all of the other things that we've added are great beneficial things that are trying to be more transparent about when and how things are administered and provide consistency across the district of what that looks like. But that is going to be my recommendation, and
Madam Chair,
yes, ma'am.
I can agree with that.
Yes, ma'am.
So a couple things. Number one, just so we go back and look at these underlying things, are these red line changes that you have put in, or are these red line changes that Julie Varnum has put in, or are these
This
red
is-
line changes that the NCSBA has put in?
This is a great question. Jason went through and typed back and heard all of the correspondence between NCSBA and all of our input, not just mine, of the committee, of what we discussed and the things that we had to discuss changes. So yes, this is a combination of some of the suggestions from NCSBA as well as the suggestions that this committee has taken forth.
Except taking out the Department of Education funded? Okay.
And that's what I'm asking today to do.
All right, well, I have a quick question. It is in the first, it's in the second paragraph on the very top, in red, in an evidence-based program used as part of the curriculum to address grade-level essential-based standards. I am confused on what grade-level essential-based standards is. It just sounded like too many words in there.
The first page, page 23, yes, ma'am.
So grade.
I got grade level part, yeah.
Yeah, so the essential, so those are the standards. So that's what, the North.
Essential based is what we call it?
Essential based standards,
So through NCDPI, they have them posted for every grade level.
you can.
Yeah,
so I
sorry,
think-
my microphone's not working. And I like Ashley a lot. Yes, the essential standards are really what the standard course of study is, and that's how they're listed out.
So is it essential based or is it essential standards?
It's written as either one.
Okay, that just sounded confusing. So overall, just so that I'm clear and others who are listening are clear.
Yes.
Is this policy written with all of the changes in such a way that basically says that all surveys we conduct are opt-in?
The protected topics. So if you, the list of the protected topics, yes. I don't know, I can't even give it, maybe the tobacco survey, I don't know. I can't give an example of a survey that would not have a protected topic in it that we give, but the ones that do not have protected topics would be.
So where is that written? I think we need clarity on where is it written.
So if you
Help me
look at
find it.
parental consent on page 24, the second paragraph, it says, if prior written consent is not mandated for a survey involving a protected topic, because the survey is either not required and funded in whole part by the Department of Education, the parents or eligible student must be given an opportunity to opt out. New Hanover County Schools will develop a universal opt-out form for the staff and parents can utilize. And if you go further down, it talks about the survey window. So parents would have the option to view any survey that they could potentially opt out from.
So everything is opt-in then?
The protected topics would be, yes, ma'am. Yes, Jason.
So one way to add clarity here, if the committee were to recommend and the board were to approve the change under the first paragraph for C, parental consent, where you're striking Department of Education funded, you could in that second paragraph revise it to state if prior written consent is not mandated for a survey, then strike involving a protected topic, strike everything in the parentheses and replace it with, for example, because the survey does not involve a protected topic. I mean, that's one way of trying to bring clarity here.
That would work.
I would be okay with that.
The other, if you don't do that, if there's a change to the first paragraph, you'll need to make a corresponding change in the second paragraph anyway, because as it reads now,
You're right.
it's setting up the assumption that there's prior written consent that's not mandated for some surveys involving protected topics, which would no longer be true. So you need to change the second paragraph anyway.
Could you restate that language that you suggested? If prior consent is not mandated for a survey, the parents or eligible student must be given an opportunity to opt out? And then what was the second part?
You could just leave it at that.
Okay.
If prior written consent is not mandated for a survey, strike everything from involving to Department of Education. The paragraph would read, comma, the parents or eligible student must be given an opportunity to opt out.
Love it.
That's certainly one option so that the second paragraph flows from the revised first paragraph. If you need some additional clarity, you could put that in, but that's probably the cleanest revision.
Okay, so back to my original question, is even making all that changes, we're going to give a survey and it's going to be considered opt-in unless a parent opts out. Is that right?
No, the impact of this would be to require any survey, regardless of funding source, that involves a protected topic is opt-in. If there's a survey that does not involve a protected topic, then it would still be opt-out.
So with those,
I just think we need to write that clearly stated just like that, because this is very confusing. Can I ask Mr. Madden a question?
Yes.
Do you think that parents are going to understand this? Like when you send home a survey, and is a parent going to know that I'm getting this permission slip to do a survey, and I'm either saying yes or no? I mean, is that what we're talking about? Because I don't think the average person is going to understand this. The average parent. I mean, am I overthinking that? I just think it needs to be pretty clear that we're opting in or we're opting out unless. I don't want to put you on the spot, but I'm just.
I think it's a difficult question to answer because it's an assumption on parents and what they understand and wouldn't understand. But I think that, the language opting in is pretty clear, and so is opting out. So it's hard for me to answer that question.
Okay.
Ms. Grable, to be honest with you. Some would, I think, not have a problem understanding it, and some might be a little confused by the verbiage.
Ms. Barnum?
Yeah, I think generally the restatement and rewording that Mr. Weber is offering, I think would be really helpful. I think that'll also be helpful to staff.
Right.
In really deciphering the protected topics versus the not, and the opt-in versus the opt-out. Yeah, I would recommend that at the top.
Putting it at the very beginning so
Yes.
that, okay.
Yes.
Jason, any comments on that?
So is the suggestion to move the parental consent section to the top, or to add language at the beginning? Like what is the specific recommendation?
I was suggesting, this is Julie, I was suggesting to add that clarifying language that you mentioned a while ago in if the second paragraph is revised, and then adding a statement to clarify. So I think that made sense to me.
You mean second paragraph of letter C, little c?
No.
Second paragraph of the opening comments?
Yes.
Okay. I would like to see it in opening comments too, so that people just already are getting set on it.
So just in opening comments, adding another paragraph that says, protected topics on any survey level will be opt-in, written consent, and non-protected topics would be opt-out surveys. Okay, we can add that language as well. With those changes, I am fine with moving that forward to the board.
Me too.
So that will go in this column over here.
Yes, ma'am. So I will make a motion to bring forth to the May meeting.
With changes that Jason Weber will insert.
Yes,
Yeah,
ma'am.
okay.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. That brings us to the counseling program, 3610. Ms. Bradford, I know you wanted to have a discussion with that, so I'm going to let you.
Yeah, page 28. It's exactly what I brought up last time, and I bring it back for that reason, that it's not, it's changeable, I think is a nice way to say that. So in Policy Code 3620 Counseling Program, top of the page 28, the second block of red, third word in, it reads, oh golly, that's a long sentence.
Academic career.
The school counseling program will mirror the American School Counselor Association national model for school counseling programs and meet the objectives of the State Board of Education's comprehensive school counseling program curriculum and the academic career and development. I'm moving to strike social /emotional, so it'll read academic career and development needs. And then come down under A, academic guidance. I had said that word equitable. And Josie, you had a suggestion for how that could read. Do you remember what it was?
Well, when we were discussing, I think where this word gets thrown around, fair and consistent opportunities. I
Yes.
think that is something that is just scope of things, and so are you saying to replace that with
Yeah,
that?
with fair and consistent access to opportunities. Yes, those two things, please.
Ms. Barnard?
Yes, ma'am. Sorry.
All right, so I need to make a comment in opposition to Ms. Bradford's thoughts. I appreciate where she's coming from on that, but social and emotional has to be in there because that's part of DPI. And so we can remove the words all we want, but we're still required to do it. So I just think it just is a bad look for us to take out words that we know we have to do because we don't like the words, or I'm not certain why you want to take those words out. So that would be something that I would be interested in hearing from you. And then the same thing with equitable, fair and consistent and equitable aren't the same, they don't have the same meaning, I don't think, because what is right for some students is not right for others. And we even talked about that during you guys talked about it at the legislative committee where we were talking about the program where 2 schools were going to be in, we wanted to be in that pilot to do. And we talked all about when somebody said, oh, wouldn't it be so nice, to have it for everybody? And then the another comment was, oh, but we have to start somewhere. Let's start with the kids who need it first. So that's equity. That's equitable. That's not fair and consistent because sometimes there is no consistency because the situations are so different. So I would like to hear from Ms. Bradford on why she wants to take out social and emotional, the wording when we are required by DPI to have it.
Madam Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
my voice is a little limited today. I explained this last month. I haven't changed. We were all here last month. So I respectfully
I would like to hear it again,
decline.
please.
We can have a word salad. We cannot have a word salad. I make a motion that we change these 2 things to what was said now.
With that being said, I know helping define the role of a guidance counselor, and really everybody talks about the workload and what's on everybody's plate. And so saying developmental or social emotional developmental, their primary focus is to provide career and guidance for academics. I know even in conversations with staff recently, we talked about that. Wouldn't it be great to have a CTE guidance counselor? That'd be wonderful because to have an expert in a field. And so the more that we open up and put on the plate, and I thought looking into it, it was a suggested recommendation. And so to have it as developmental, I think it encompasses their focus of the job is academic and career-based. And obviously, as needs arise, they can also accommodate those.
Well, if you look further down in that same paragraph, where I don't know who wrote all the red in that, but if we look at some of the examples given, it's talking about group sessions for habitual attendance, forming healthier friendships, the need for effective coping skills. That's social and emotional development. So why would we give it as an example and then take the wording out as something we want to do? I just don't get it. And we do have a CTE counselor.
Every school.
The CDC, tell me what the word, yes, we do have that, so that they can do that. So that was just an aside point, but who of us up here is a counselor? Who of us has had any counseling classes? Who of us have had any professional development on the American School Counselor Association national model? So who are we to say that sucks and we don't want their words in here? Excuse me, I didn't mean to say that.
I will say, I appreciate the passion, but let's please be respectful of one another's opinions as we discuss
No, I'm respectful of her opinion. Now I'm stating facts.
Okay. With that being said, the motion is on the table to strike and rechange the wording. I will second that.
Strike and we change what wording?
To strike, to have just developmental instead of social emotional developmental, and fair and consistent access to opportunities and rigorous. So I support that, and I'm willing to move this forward to the board.
Call for a vote.
You can't say willing to move it forward.
I'm sorry. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any
No.
opposed? No. That moves forward with the board with those changes. That brings us forth to
So
policy.
we're going to put that in under the second box. I'm just making, that's what we're doing here.
Going to policy 2310, public participation at board meetings. And so looking at this, I know you ladies both had talked to me about the issues with the number of participants and the hour format. So if you all want to start the discussion about what that looks like, I'll open the floor to you now, either one.
So I had a couple questions on that. When I was reading in the main points and what we're going to talk about, it just says to discuss call of the audience procedures, but there were no procedures in here. The procedures that were in there were already the rules of decorum. So and they're not New Hanover County Schools call to the audience procedures. They're the Board of Education call to the audience procedures. So I'm not certain what I read through, and I'm not certain, I can't glean from any of this what we want to change, because the policy that was posted in Assembly has no markups on it, and it's hard to tell.
This has been the recommendation, that at this policy committee, our feedback is going to be the markups and the recommendation. So while, yes, this is our starting point, currently what we operate and how we operate is right here. As a board, we discussed making changes to this and potentially making changes to the public participation at board meetings. So both of you all had talked to me at different times that you saw inconsistencies with 30 call to audience members with 5 additional spots filled up in the hour time frame. So what I'm saying is I open the floor to you to discuss those concerns to begin with. So no, I have not marked up anything. I have written down feedback from what other board members have told me, from what community members have told me, and we are opening the discussion on this dialogue.
Madam
I will
Chair.
make the changes to the BOE call of audience. Yes, ma'am.
I am not in favor of a broad overhaul of the public participation in meetings. I'd like to somehow open them up to more. However, the board meetings are the business of the board. We're here to conduct the business of the second largest employer in New Hanover County, 3,900 employees, 25, sometimes 26,000 students. And so we can't have the entire board meeting be comprised of people speaking to us, some of them on the very same topic they spoke last month. So under B, these pages aren't necessarily numbered, but under B, public comment, what we're doing now violates this. It says the maximum number of time for the public comment is 1 hour. We never hit 1 hour.
We never.
We go over.
It's just a simple
right?
math
That's what-
Always
formula.
go over.
If we have 30 people sign up, times 2 minutes, that's 1 hour. We allow an extra 5 people to sign up. That takes us over 10 more minutes. So now we're at 70 minutes. And that's not counting transition time. That's not counting clapping time. That's not counting having to repel the attempt to make chaos in the room. So we're already violating this policy.
So you'd like
The
to make
second sentence
changes to the
says,
procedures.
speakers remaining at the end of the hour period may be reorganized at the end of the board
Recognized.
agenda. Ms. Crable did some of that under her term as chair, and those people never stayed. I stayed, but it's the effect of cutting them off. So I don't know how to solve this problem. I'm just pointing out there's an inconsistency in policy in what we're doing now. So it needs input from all 7 of us to figure out how we're going to do this differently. Or we get input from other school boards. You know, the county commission only has 5 or 6 people speak. The board in Pender only has 3 or 4 people speak. It's amazing at the difference in the other school boards and the other boards that have public input. Why do we have so much time delegated to this and so little to the business of running the school board or running the school district, advising the superintendent on how we want him to direct the staff to act?
I'm with you completely, and tried for a year to do that, and was basically crucified with an arrow through my forehead every meeting.
Yeah.
That an hour is an hour. And I can tell you that I have been at a city council meeting and a county commissioner meeting where I was next, and the hour was up, and they said, "We're sorry." And does it make you feel good? No, it does not. But that's the rule. And we, as a board, have just been chicken to follow our own policy. I mean, yes, we want to hear from people, but they can, and I don't want to cut anybody off, but they can email us if they want.
Well,
And
let's
they
look at-
can
they
call
do.
us.
Let's
Our
look
phone
at the
numbers are listed, so
suggestion
it has to
of
be
how
an
we can-
hour.
Let's look at the suggestion of how we can update our procedures to accurately reflect our policy. So looking at this, we have an issue with the 30 participants plus 5. Do you want to make a recommendation from policy committee to change that number to 25?
25.
Participants.
But the
Madam
other
Chair?
thing,
Yeah.
Apologies.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yes.
Madam Chair, last month at the policy meeting, I suggested that I'd bring a few ideas for this policy committee's consideration moving forward. So if it's okay, I'll tie some of those in
I
right
love
now.
that.
Yes, please.
In addition to the incongruency between the number of people and the amount of time allocated, some months we have the call to the audience fill up in literally minutes, between 4 and
Yes.
7 minutes. And in other months, and I think we've seen one maybe 2 months ago, it didn't fill up until the next day, and then we've seen it not fill up at all. More often than not, though, it fills up quickly. I know that a lottery option has not been popular in the past, but we have taken a look at that and proposed for your consideration a lottery option, which, whether we call it equitable or fair and consistent access to opportunity, we can open it up, and this is just for your consideration, open up call to the audience a week prior to the board meeting. So at the conclusion of the agenda review, we essentially make it an open portal to sign up to speak. And we leave that open for the duration of the week, and we close it out the Monday,
Oh, good.
perhaps prior to the board meeting. So it's open for a full 6 or 7 days. It doesn't necessitate a specific time or piece of technology or access. We know teachers are in classrooms, we know that bankers are banking, and we know that we're in policy committee meeting. So people have an opportunity to sign up. If it's whatever the board directs, 20 people that sign up, if that's what we land on, then that's the 20. If it far supersedes that, then we use a random number generator to come up with the 20. Those 20 are assigned numbers. Random number generator, completely above board and transparent in how they're selected. And I'm using 20 as an example. Right now it's 30, but in the example that you're discussing, we'll say 20, are selected randomly. We notify and make public the names that were selected so that they know. And then the in-person sign-up still remains, so folks that absolutely have to speak are not denied that opportunity. They may need to show up a little bit earlier, but they can facilitate or they can make that happen. So that's a lottery option or a variant therein that we've been discussing that we thought may be acceptable were we to move that way, and it allows a broader access of opportunity for folks to sign up over a longer period of time, potentially yielding additional or differentiated voices, potentially not, but more folks over a longer period.
I mean, I appreciate that suggestion, and I'm very much a fan of that. I love that it's a week prior, so we're giving the access. I've heard it from a lot of staff, like, as soon as it opens, I don't even have an opportunity to sign up because I'm teaching. We want you to keep teaching, please don't stop to sign up, but we want to also hear from our staff, and so I love that. The random generator is great. I love the feedback. That was one of my notes from a community member, to be notified if they were selected. So if we are going to use a random generator and to sign up, are you number one in the sign up, and then the list of generated numbers, these were the chosen however many we recommend. The one other thing that we had openly discussed, I think on the dais, was, is there a possibility to say, I need a translator, but I want to come speak? So whether that's just like, Arabic or Spanish or whatever, having a week prior would hopefully, I'm asking, and would potentially allow us to give that opportunity and that support to our families. Maybe not always,
Right.
but at least for us to attempt it.
Right. Of course, I think that we could get there. The model that I just suggested would, for example, close it out the day prior. So
Okay.
that amount of time to facilitate a translator may not exactly work, but I hear your point. I think that we could make that happen. Absolutely.
I wonder if during the sign-up, sorry, I'm thinking out loud, but during the sign-up process, if I sign up knowing I need a translator, then we have more time to say, just to acknowledge that. And depending on the lottery system, it's just like how we do our open choice schools. It is a lottery system. This is not a first come, first serve. I've always complained about that openly with our call to audience. Your voice is not more important because you clicked on the button first. And I also still stand by the statement, the call to audience is not the most effective way to communicate. We are not allowed to talk back and forth with one another, because when you're able to have a full conversation and actually engage with one another versus a targeted, attack for the most of the time of what's happening, I think it would yield more effective conversation and actual back and forth, so that I do not believe the call to audience is most effective. I absolutely would support keeping it. The other question became about, do we prioritize individuals that live in this county? Yes, ma'am.
I'm not going to want to prioritize individuals that live in the county. Ms. Mason would bring up speech and hearing impaired. And would you explain how the lottery part works again, real slow?
Sure.
Just that part, okay. We know from what we're doing tonight, we had probably 500, 530, but some of them weren't legitimate. But approximately 500 people wanted to express their opinions to us. Some of them I'd not heard before, so it was great. So say we had 500 people, how would they be selective? I know it's random, but explain that other part.
I'll give an example that if folks are watching, they can try at home, and whether or not this is the exact software we use or not, it would go something like this. So take a number, let's just call it 100 people sign up over the course of that week. We would Google random number generator, or this is the example that I'm giving, and it will say, and Anita can probably bring this up, it'll say, what numbers are we looking between 1 and Anita put 100 in max. All right, generate a number. The first number is the 39th person, next number. So essentially we would do this 20 times to generate a random number from the 100 folks that signed up, irrespective and regardless of when they did so. That would essentially be how it would work. So the max number would be the total number of folks who signed up, and it would generate, we would click that button for the sake of this example 20 times to get the 20 participants.
So are detractors who would say the person in central office creating that random code would be biased towards whatever their political leaning would be? How would you answer that?
I could film us doing the process.
That would be great. That would be
Like the Powerball drawing.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, there we go. Another visual. Okay, so I say I'm going to make a motion that we try the lottery for 3 months? Would that be a fair trial?
Well, we would bring this before the board to see if they want.
There's no motion, we would add that in.
Right,
So, but we could, the idea would be that we would consider trying it for 3 months, trying it with a 20+5, that would then get us back into compliance with our policy, and see what happens. We tried this agenda briefing, and after 3 months, it's starting to gel, so.
So let me kind of put into words, if you're looking at we're changing it to the Board of Education call to audience procedures. If you look at that, we would be changing 20 participants with 5 additional slots, and then jump down to call to audience speeches. Instead of saying a first come, first served basis, we would say we would utilize a lottery system that would be open 1 week prior to selection date, which would be 1 week prior to selection date, and the selection date would be 24 hours prior to the board meeting.
Correct. Or, yes, ma'am, that's correct. Or we tie the opening to the conclusion of the agenda review, so that in good conscience, folks in the community have seen what it is you're going to be talking about, and then have the opportunity to sign up based on that information. And sometimes that's a Monday, sometimes that's a Tuesday. So will of the board, Madam Chair, on when that opens, but essentially providing about a week, but many days.
I love it.
Okay, and so,
I've just got a couple questions on that. So what it appears that you have put in for New Hanover County Schools Call the Audience procedures is basically our rules of decorum, which is different than procedures. So I'm just, and those are not part of our policy at all. They are just a document that we created. So I am wondering where you are going to put that. And so I'm not in favor of moving this forward to the board without seeing all of this in writing. This is not one of the ones that I'm comfortable in let's let Jason make some comments and move on. Because this is not part of policy. This is just rules of decorum. And this was basically to get.
Do you want the second page?
No, where it says New Hanover County Schools Call to the Audience procedures. Ms. Walker developed this rules of decorum for our meetings when we were getting out of hand every single time, that just trying to get people not to stand up and hold their signs and not to block the aisles and all that, and giving folks plenty of notice that when you're over, the gavel will be hit and the chair will say, move on. So that's what this is. These aren't procedures for call to the audience.
No, I would agree to take this out separate. I would love to move this forward, and if we move it forward, we could talk about it at the agenda briefing, so that we would be really solid at the agenda briefing what it was going to be the following week, because we desperately need to change what we're doing for the call to audience.
I would
This
second
part
moving it
with
forward.
Ms. Crable's, I could cut those right on out. I mean, the people who are going
they're
to be
important.
polite will be polite. The people who are going to be unruly are going to be unruly. That's what this bad boy's for.
And they're still going to be unruly.
I mean, ladies, we're here to discuss how we want to change, if we want to change the call to audience and the selection process and that sort of thing. So this is already posted, I believe, the procedures, or if we call it rules of decorum, this has already been posted.
It should be posted, but this is what should be on when someone clicks on call to the audience, but I don't think that this is there.
Okay, so,
Do we want it there? Jason, can you put it there?
I was like, Jason.
I mean, sorry.
But the thing, yeah, okay.
So, and Crystal, correct me if I'm wrong, when the call to the audience portion opens, this verbiage is what's displayed. Is that correct? Okay. So yes,
The
this is.
verbiage says what's explained is what's in letter B. Yes, the letter B.
It has changed over the last couple of months.
But that's not what you see when you press on call to the audience.
Anita's pulling it up now because mine automatically reverts to the sign-up page. So we go actually to the web, and that's what you see. That is the verbiage. So you have the rules of decorum before you sign up, and then it repeats itself after you sign up.
So we would be updating those, and the board, I mean, right now, we're discussing updating this to reflect our policy better, which both of you ladies had talked to me about, the hour is not being adhered to. And then we had some suggestions, and I've been vocal about the first come, first serve, I don't like that, as well as having the opportunity to potentially have a translator to reach more individuals and serve our community better. And so that is what we're looking on bringing forward to a discussion for the board. I'm in favor of bringing this to discussion. So I make a
I
motion.
am not in favor until we see it in writing. Because there's a lot of talk. This is going to create a lot of fervor, in our community. So I think that we need to the three of us at least need to see what's going. So if we want to put it into the category where Jason and Pat, look at it and wordsmith it and let us look at it before it goes to the board, because there's going to be nothing worse than it going to the board and we're not even in agreement on it. Because there are people on our board that believe that we should go on for 2 hours if we want to.
And they have every right to have
I know that, but what I'm saying is we have to have it down. And we have the longest call to the audience of any school board out there. And people make comments to me all the time, why do you do that to yourself? When we are at NCSBA things. Pender and Brunswick only have 20 minutes.
Can I ask this question? Because you said we're not in agreement. So you do not support the idea of a lottery system, is what you're saying?
I want to see how the wording comes out because I am in support of that. But I am not in support of last minute word changes because I have had bad experiences with last minute word changes where they don't accurately reflect what we talked about. So I am not going to support moving this forward without seeing what we're writing.
And Madam Chair, I support moving it. I don't want to put this off another month. Jason suggested it was suggested last month, and we've put it off a month now, and it's grueling what we're doing every month. So I just as soon get the wording, we'll have it at the agenda briefing. If there's a problem there, then we can sideline it at the agenda briefing, but we'll have it to be seen at the agenda briefing, and I'll be able to be in agreement on it or not, and we can derail it then.
But I don't think we can add it to the agenda review because we've already missed our deadline. And Ms. Mason tried to bring something up one time and was told by our board chair, rightly so, that we didn't have two people to submit it. So
This was referred to the committee from our board, so we're bringing it back under changes to policy, so.
But I do see what Ms. Crable was saying. Typically, when we change the time to the third Tuesday, we would have and I explained this to Ms.
you're right.
Kudetsky, I said we had a 1-week timeframe, but because we had to bump the agenda review to Monday, it is not
Right,
going to be
right.
on the agenda. So
Okay.
unless if we amend the agenda during the review, then it could be on, or we could hold this in committee and get the wording typed up correctly to be put on May's agenda review.
And it gives us a time to kind of talk to our fellow board members that this is coming.
You mean June?
It would be the May agenda review for the June board meeting.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I do want to move this forward. It is kind of frustrating. I don't know if we'll have support to add it to the agenda. So what I'm going to anticipate is, let's make those changes in the event that it's the will of the board to add it to the agenda review.
Try.
And if it's not, then we'll put it in policy for next month, if that makes sense. So let's game plan for hopefully added to the agenda review, but I don't know where that's gonna, get in here, so.
And if I can ask a clarifying question, so the proposed changes would be changing from 30 participants to 20, is that right? And leaving 5 slots in person,
Yes.
adding language saying if more than 20 individuals sign up, a lottery system will be used.
Well,
And then
yeah, the
under-
lottery system would be
Regardless of who
used.
signs up, we'll use the lottery
And
system.
then Ms. Crable had made the note that it would be the Board of Education called audience and rules of decorum, not necessarily procedures, as well as, one thing I think is important that Josh said, to ensure we are sharing with the public who is on the call to audience list. At one point, somebody asked me, I was like, oh yeah, we have that list, and I realized that's not posted on Assembly. So to ensure, however that looks like, if it's the random number generator that gets shared and individuals have their assigned number, whatever that looks like, but sharing with the public in that regards.
Yeah,
Thank you.
there's a lot of anxiety as whether I'm on and what number I am, and
Right.
they email you and text you, and so that would just be a courtesy.
Thank you. And that brings us to,
And we have to make sure that when we post that we don't post people's identifying information.
I wholeheartedly agree with that. Moving on to policy 3620, Ms. Crable,
So
you asked to
where is
discuss
this going? Where on this sheet
I
is this
said we are
going?
going to make those changes and notes in the event that it does get added to agenda review, but as of right now, it cannot be added to
But
the
which
agenda.
column can I put it in now, so when I walk away from here, I have a clear understanding on what we're doing?
It's a new column, so I can't,
Why is it a new column? It's either we're moving it on or we're not moving it on.
because
try and get
in
it
the
on the
event
agenda
that,
review.
in the event that the board, as a collective whole, during the agenda review, votes to amend the agenda to add this to the agenda review, then it will be on the agenda review. In the event that the board does not do that, but makes a vote to amend the agenda, it will not be on.
So it goes in under existing policies for amendment at the next regular meeting.
Sure.
Sure.
With a little asterisk.
I mean, it has to be an
that-
asterisk.
It has to go somewhere. We have to decide what we're going to do with it, because we have to put the changes in.
Okay, then yes, with the asterisk. Okay, policy 3620, Ms. Crable, you brought this up for discussion.
Yes, so if you, Pat, would you please bring up what I sent you? With my proposed changes again, so we could all see them in writing.
Madam Chairman, point of order, can you call Pat by her first name and
last name.
last name? Because every time you say it, I look up. I'd really appreciate that.
Sure, I think that's fine.
Ms. Kadetsky?
And to scroll down to page 30, well, it's 38 on the packet.
It's not what's in the packet.
Oh,
Because
okay.
what's in the packet is what is in our policy manual, and there were no track changes in it, and I put in my track changes so that we could all talk intelligently
SK
about it.
revisions?
Huh?
SK revisions?
Okay.
Is that what you made copies of?
Well, it's on the,
Okay, I think so too. I think it's in here.
So the
It's
policy
really
numbers
hard
include-
to go back and forth when you don't have the documents ahead of time to look at them all here, to read them quickly, but to see if your stuff made it. So, let's see, I am on page 38. It's highlighted in yellow. What is currently there now, I don't like what's currently there now, but I know that's not going to change. But what I would like to add in is after state law in red, or federal law, regulation, or sub-regulatory guidance. Again, that comes back into the same thing as the social emotional learning. You don't have to put it in writing if you don't want to, but you have to do it. But I think it's imperative upon us to recognize the fact that Title IX is a federal regulation and that we should make reference to it in our policy, that we will be in compliance with it. So I just want to add 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 words.
Any discussion?
I would be against doing that.
This policy has been voted on by the board. I know that there's a couple of things, and I'm watching them closely. Bills that are in effect, things that are going to be changing, that we might have to be updating the verbiage anyway. But at this point in time, with respect to the majority of the board, this has already been voted on. I do not support bringing this back to add those changes at this time. Like you said, this is things that we already are doing, so I
But
would.
what happened was this was brought up at a board meeting without it being in writing. I didn't have a chance to get all of my thoughts together because we did it so quickly and non-transparently. These are words that need to be included in our policy. And so I will say these things again at the regular board meeting. Just because we don't move it on doesn't mean that I'm not going to say it there as well.
Well, I want to bring up too, I just said, there are a few things in bills that are going through right now that would make us change this. So this is not something that is, it's talking, I feel like both sides here. You said, these words are not needed, we have to do it anyway, but we need to put it in there because
Well,
we have
they
to do
are
it.
needed. They're
So
just implied.
It is, the will of the board was to move this policy forward. So my motion is to
Keep it the
throw
same.
this policy to the floor. This is the will of the board. This has been voted on. And I'm not going to be disrespectful to the board members because ultimately we work for the board as a whole. And I understand that there are going to be things that we disagree on. Again, there is more than likely going to be changes with a couple of different bills and different things that are going through that we're going to have to adjust policy and at that time to bring it up again. But I have no intention to move forward at this time.
I would like to have a vote, official vote, please.
Okay? What is your motion?
My motion is to amend policy 3620 to include the words federal law, regulation, and sub-regulatory guidance.
Do we have a second? Hearing no second, that does not call for a vote. So moving on to policy 4400.
I'll just throw it to the floor then.
I want to, this was asked to be brought up, back up. I know initially when we were discussing the attendance policy, there was issues potentially with students who were having to miss for different reasons, but still staying in good academic guidance. And so the question was asked on behalf of staff if there was an opportunity to potentially look into, were there things like for individuals who had jobs they had to get to or different sporting events that were unrelated to school or other things like that. I'll be honest, upon reflection more, thinking about it, since we do not have a hybrid model of schooling, we either have to be all in school or all in virtual school, I think this creates a lot of issues and a lot of extra work on our staff. So I've kind of not necessarily in full favor of it, but I was just wanting to hear an update, if any, about potential opportunities in that realm, because I know we had discussed it and I just didn't want to.
So what changes are you proposing? I don't see any in my document.
There is no changes being proposed to this, but I believe it was 2 months ago, I have to look back at I think it was February meeting minutes, we had discussed coming back around to this idea. We have students with exceptions to attendance law, with what that looks like, and if there was any flexibility or guiding rules that we would want to try to accommodate, but be fair and all that stuff. And so that was a discussion that we had for you guys to bring back.
I'd love to do whatever it takes to create something where we have long-term discussion over hybrid model, but it's not something we can do quickly. It would take enormous amount of input from the staff. But
And that
we're
might be
going that
something-
way in the future, so we need to look down the road a couple years and see.
Well, and I don't think this calls for a vote, but the more that I reflect on just kind of the feedback that we've been given, this might be something that discussing in potentially legislative, if this is something that we want to explore as one of the legislative agenda, to open dialogue and discussion, what it would look like and encompass that. But that's kind of where I'm at this time. I don't think it's something that we can tangibly do effectively, but I do think it would be an interesting conversation to have moving forward, knowing that we have varying, like I said, jobs and degrees of student involvement.
I agree.
So then policy 2660, the change that's in here is to cross out on page 49, number 2, to cross out Recreation Advisory Board and insert the word gardens. It should say New Hanover County Parks and Gardens. I move that we move this forward to the board.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. So that is going to be moved.
Oh, boy.
So that'll be on the top left, existing policies for amendment at the next, with no changes. Well, that is a change. But yes, this is the changes that are listed. Okay, and that brings us forth to this substantial policy. The first one is 2130, Code of Ethics.
Madam Chair?
Yes, ma'am.
On my agenda, I go from attendance to 2660, a G, board appointments to outside committees.
Yes, that was the Parks and Gardens. That was
Oh,
it.
okay.
It was just the title change. It's brought to the
A little
attention.
slow. Okay.
So, I gotta get organized for a second, hold on. Okay, so in 2120, one of the changes is in page 54, capital B, number 5, model civility and integrity to students and employees of all of the elements and respectful dialogue, considering in the board and complying with all board policies and set expectations. So that's a change. Number 17, the red, as stated in board policy 2120, board members, if you go down to the third line with the board, I think it should, packet page 55. And it's page 2 of 3. But if you go, I'll just keep reading. Or attempting to influence any person with respect to any matter pertaining to the employment with the board, or, should that say or, the board spouse, or should it say of?
Yeah, I think.
So change that to or,
Which page?
right here, 55, number 17, the red.
Yeah, I see, but
Yeah, next to the last word line, sentence, line 3. It's of.
1, 2, 3. So should it be or does of sound, make sense to everybody?
these words came directly from the NCSBA.
Yes.
It could be a typo.
But what I'm saying is. So of or?
I believe it is supposed to be of.
Okay.
The employment of, with the board of the board member's spouse.
Right.
Okay.
If you read it in context,
Yeah,
this
you're right.
is preventing board members from attempting to influence any person with respect to a matter pertaining to employment with the board of the member's spouse. So of is correct there.
Okay. And then I was going to ask to add,
Hey, can I ask a question?
yes,
Are you gonna, are we gonna put them on the sheet as we go along, or are you gonna
Yes.
do it at the end? Okay.
yeah, but we're not going to be able, we might, hopefully we'll get through a couple of them, but we're not going to be able to get through them
Okay,
all.
so we've only been, so we're still on 2120?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So I was going to ask, I mean, reading through these code of ethics for board members, if we wanted to add two things. One, so to add a number 23, to not seek individual retaliation of other members for motive or personal reasons, i.e. religious or political. And I would add a 24th, recommendation, so understand that our role as a board member and as a chair and as a liaison to the appointed committees or subcommittees.
Say that last one again?
To understand our role as either a member, a chairperson, liaison, or appointment to subcommittees.
Oh, love it.
So I would like, again, to say, before moving this forward, I think we need to see those in writing, because just to make sure that we're all clear on the wording before we move this forward to the whole board. Those are a lot of words that I didn't keep up with trying to write them all down. I mean, you have them written, and we all should be able to see those and take an accurate vote on those for the exact same reasons that Dr. Faust would like for all the policies in the series that he's responsible for. We are responsible for the 2000 series, and I think it's professional courtesy for us to do the same.
Okay, I'm going to restate them again, and if we wanted to hold this in committee, that's fine. But I would want to see a number 23 added, to not seek individual retaliation of other board members' motives for personal reasons, i.e. religious and/or political. Number 24, to understand our role and to not overstep as a member, a chairperson, liaison, or appointee to subcommittees as board members. So those are the two rules that I would love to see added, because that has definitely happened, and we need to ensure that as board members, we are being professional and courteous and understand that everybody's voice matters, even when we differ in opinions. So if we want to hold that in committee, that is 2120, and we can
I'd like
vote
to
on
hold
that.
it in committee. I'd make a motion to hold it in committee.
I'd be okay with that, and second that, to bring that back, and we'll vote on it for next month.
So we'll get that back with it written here.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
all we'll have to do is vote. We won't have to
Correct.
spend 20 minutes on it. Great.
Yes, and so moving on to policy 2123, board member opportunities for development. The changes that you see in red are from the NCSBA.
And if you note that the first one where we take out the national school boards, that is required, not an optional.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I move we accept those changes.
And I would second. My only question of discussion is with technology and education. I think, Ms. Brinson, you and I had talked about this before. Any technology belonging to the school and being used by students must comply with the student code of conduct. And so I don't know if we needed to
Are you
specifically.
moving on to the next policy
No,
already?
policy 2032 or 30.
You just moved on,
Oh,
okay.
I'm sorry. I was looking at.
21,
I
23.
thought it was a multiple page one. That was my bad. So, policy 2123, you said move to the board, and I seconded, so that'll be with no changes. So 21, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No. So 2123 goes to the board, and just making a note, there is no required training to serve as a board member, because I know that was questioned and as well.
Now we're at technology.
Now technology. So now my question becomes, with this, so 3220,
That's a lot of red.
there is. I support the changes that are being made to this policy, but the one thing that I wanted to ask is, with technology and us going to one-to-one devices, I didn't know if we needed to make reference to while students are utilizing, regardless of where they are, on campus or off, that they will have to, their device would have to comply with the student code of conduct.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the last of what you said.
I like that.
I'm sorry, what?
The last part of what you said, I didn't hear you.
I said, regardless of where the students are, if they were utilizing our technology, since it's their textbook, that they would have to be in compliance with the student code of conduct anytime utilizing the device.
Are you trying to write that in somewhere?
Well, I had asked about that, and so I'm asking now if that is something that we would want to add to further in this policy.
I like the idea.
So looking,
Where would you propose adding it?
I would be open to input. That was a question that I wanted to ask openly. Maybe, so if you look at the
So is
opening.
so would the intent be, so let's say you have a student who has a school-issued laptop and they are on some social media site, posting threatening messages. Is that in order to make sure it's clear that the student code of conduct with regards to threats, that code of conduct, those prohibitions on threats would apply whether the student is using the device on campus or off campus. Is that the intent of the clarifying language?
Yes. I mean,
Okay.
and
So-
Mr. Madden, I don't know the student code of conduct very, very well. I'm sure you do, but what I
And-
would say is, since it's a classroom textbook, or devices are, I would say the expectation should be consistent if they're gonna
And
utilize it.
that concept is already captured in the code of conduct itself. Where depending on the nexus between off-campus conduct and on-campus disturbance, some off-campus conduct, whether it's, with a personal device or a school-issued device, could be subject to discipline. So I don't necessarily know if, and there may be similar language in this policy. I'm not quite as familiar as I am with the student code of conduct policy. But I say all that to say that, that concept is already captured in the student code of conduct and discipline policies themselves with regards to on and off campus behavior.
Jason, isn't there also, I know at several NCSBA law conferences, we've talked about student behavior off campus in respect to bullying and that kind of stuff about when does it become the responsibility of the school system and when does it stop and the student is on their own. Do you recall would any of that apply to this?
Well, right. So I mean again, that's a general concept that's already captured in board policy. It's, every situation is fact specific. And this is an area of law that has had some recent cases with regards to, schools disciplining students for, social media posts that may have occurred off campus. And that's, your board policies on student discipline capture some of those concepts at a high level, recognizing that everything is very fact specific. But you're right, there's no broad, bright line across the board rule on that under existing court precedent.
I mean, kind of looking over in between the first and second paragraph would be where my suggestion to, yes, in our packet, it's page 58, yes, ma'am. So to have just a sentence that says, the technology that is issued by the New Hanover County School Districts belongs to the school, and any students using the device, regardless of location, must comply with the student code of conduct.
If you're making a motion, I'll second
So
it.
I'll make that motion to add that. It's seconded, so all in favor?
I would like to, before we vote on that, make sure that that's going into the existing policies with changes by Jason
Yes.
category, because I can't keep up with all of these words that you're adding.
Okay. So, and I also support the changes that are documented. So I would,
One more
Madam
question.
Chair?
Go.
I'm sorry, there's a couple of other changes. Everything in
Okay.
red, perfectly agree with, but there's some references to old technology in here that
Okay.
we'd like to kind of strike through.
Okay.
In the first paragraph, where in red you see make data more accessible, personalized learning, removing the easily customized curriculum, because that's pretty much the same thing as the personalized learning.
Where is that, Dawn?
In the first paragraph, right after make data
7
more
lines down.
accessible, personalized learning,
See it.
the easily customized curriculum, striking that. And then in the second paragraph, right after where it's got productive citizens in red, where it says the curriculum committee should provide, change that to pacing guides or curriculum resources for integrating technological resources. That came from curriculum instruction.
So, I can't find that one. Can you say it again, please?
Certainly. So in the second paragraph on the first page, right after the red where it says productive citizens, 1, 2, 3.
Oh, yes,
Fifth line
okay.
down, it says the curriculum committee should provide, instead of saying suggestions in the curriculum guides, they want to say pacing guides or curriculum resources for
Okay.
integrating technological resources.
Okay.
And then on the second page, first paragraph, where it lists after 1, it's got hardware including both fixed and mobile technologies. It lists all the stuff, like removing netbooks, e-readers, smartphones, because we don't use any of those.
Okay.
And then on page 3, the second paragraph, the second line where it talks about personal gaming devices or consoles, laser pointers, routers, we would like to add in that sentence, personal assistant devices, kind of like your Amazon Echoes and those.
They're called what, personal assistance devices?
Personal assistant devices, yes.
That's paragraph 2. Is that what you're
Yes,
saying?
paragraph 2 on page 3.
Okay.
And that's it.
I would support those changes that Ms. Brinson suggested.
I have a question
Second.
about, it's in paragraph 2, what was the wording? That I think, paragraph 2 wording, what did I say with that? I think, all right, so if we look there and we start reading, the first sentence, it stops with student achievement, and their
First page.
student achievement, and the period has struck out, and then we move down to a black and then we see some more red, and then we move down to students. They're just kind of sticking out there. Are those things that when we were editing, that we just didn't get out? And I couldn't accept changes or hide changes because it was in a PDF.
To support student achievement and prepare
No, I think it's supposed to be that way. It would
It
read-
says to
it would-
support student achievement and,
To prepare students.
oh, the to prepare, I didn't see that
Yeah.
part. Okay, sorry. All right. Then the second thing was also in section C, paragraph 2, where it talks about, section C, paragraph 2, use of technology in the bathrooms. Okay, so it says, to protect students' privacy, personal technology devices may not be used in locker rooms, restrooms, and the nurses' offices. All right, so I understand where that's coming from. How could we possibly ever enforce that? Like, to say, you can go to the bathroom, leave your phone on the table. I'm after school and
I don't know if it means that you have to literally, check them down, but if that takes place, this is a policy and they're supposed to know, it's supposed to be inferred, they know that they're not supposed to have them in those areas. And so if we,
have them, it says they can't use them.
yeah, so,
You can't tell a child they can't take their phone into the bathroom because they may want to call 911.
but if,
But it's saying using it in
Okay.
the locker room, the restrooms, or the nurse's
And-
office. which of course-
And this would come into play, let's say a student is in the bathroom taking pictures of other students.
right.
Yeah.
That student's reported and there's an investigation, the principal would be able to point to this policy and the language that it states in here as part of a decision around discipline.
Okay.
So I would,
And really quick, board members, I was able to find, so you have a companion policy to this one, 3225, technology responsible use. And that policy establishes, pretty extensive rules around the use of school technology resources, whether it's a laptop or a tablet or something else. And that policy also captures the concept that you were discussing earlier about on or off campus behavior. And it includes language at the very beginning that says the policy itself applies regardless of whether such use occurs on or off school system property. So, so that, that distinction is also captured in 3225.
so are you saying it's good to also reflect that in this policy, or you think it's covered in that policy, so it's not needed in this policy?
I think it's covered, but if you want to, be extra covered, you could certainly include it here.
And I would recommend that we not put it in two different places, because then we have to go back and remember to edit 2 times. So if we've already got it covered, then we're covered.
Okay.
But that's, Jason, you
And
can,
I'll defer to you all whether you want it in both,
Yeah.
but we could insert parallel language in here.
And that other
in this
policy
policy
is,
3220.
that other policy is in our cross-reference section.
is it?
Is
The
it-
policy he's mentioning,
Yeah, I was
yes.
going to say, if it's in the cross-reference, then I'm fine with that. So I would be in favor with moving this forward to the board with the changes that Ms. Brenton has suggested, as well as the NCSBA changes. Since my suggestion's already covered in policy and in the reference, I don't think it's necessary for that language at this time.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So that goes 3220 into existing policies for amended changes, and I'm with Jason.
We're done.
And yeah, I was like, since we're coming up on time, I'm going to make a motion to move the rest of the substantial changes to the next meeting for discussion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that passes, and then that brings us to adjournment.
Can I just get you to please read what you have on your paper
ma'am.
so that my paper matches your paper?
So, in the top left column, we have 2660, 2123. And the top right quadrant, we have 4720, 3610, 3220, and then a caveat, the Board of Education procedures, potentially if it gets added to the agenda. And then policies held in committee, 2230, and the universal application, as well as 2120.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And right before adjournment, I know Ms. Crabo had brought up the option of having the packet prior to the very start of this meeting.
Yes.
So Ms. Kadetsky, if that's something, when the agenda is posted and we finalized it, if that is available to my colleagues to be able to get I know you said go into central office, if maybe after the agenda is posted and you can send just the policy committee an email if they want to go ahead and pick up the packets prior, that way they have it to make the notes on beforehand. Thank you
That'd
very
be
much. And with that, I
And
make
for
a motion.
Mr. Madden as well.
And Mr. Mann as well. And for that, I make a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Yeah.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Nope. We are adjourned.